everyone, and welcome to Step Up Nigeria's podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Odidi, and today's episode is a special one. We're diving into the world of politics, inclusion, and integrity, not from the perspective of the usual political elite, but through the eyes of a young leader who embodies courage, character, and change in action. According to John Maxwell, he once said that a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. Our guest today has not only chosen to walk this path, but is also clearing the way for others, women in politics, young people, and even persons with disabilities, to help them rise and to have a shot at change. Please join me in welcoming a young woman in politics, inclusion advocate, and the founder of ARC and Rainbow Development Foundation, Ifenla Oligbinde. It's nice having you here with us, Ifenla.
Thank you, Joshua. Thank you for the invite.
You're welcome. So, Ifenla, just like myself and every curious listener out there, could you briefly introduce yourself and the work you do?
Thank you, Joshua. Like you made mention already,
Yeah.
I'm Ifenla Oligbinde. I'm a lawyer. I'm Ifenla Oligbinde. I'm a lawyer and not a legal practitioner. I mean, when I say legal practitioner, I mean I'm not actively practicing law in the sense that I do not appear in court. I mean, I stopped doing that for a while since 2017. A reason being that I felt I had other skills other than, reading legal stuff and appearing in courts, especially when it comes to community development, women and youth development. And I would say that over the years, between that time and now, I would say that my passion towards women and youth development has driven me and, encouraged me to desire to strengthen institutional frameworks. And as the founder of ARC and Rainbow Development Foundation, part of what we do, which is towards empowering women and strengthening their ability to participate in decision-making processes, I would say that it's really been instructive, and it's been several shades of learning periods and phases for me.
It's good to meet you. I thought you were going to also tell us that you're a Nelson Mandela Washington Fellow.
Yes.
Inspiring.
I was selected for the Nelson Mandela Fellowship in 2023. Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, kicking off with that, I mean, Nelson Mandela gave a beautiful quote, one that I love so much. He says that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. And politics in Nigeria is not for the faint-hearted. I mean, especially for women and young people. You're a young person, you're trying to go into politics, you need to think twice. You're a woman, you also need to do that. But let me ask you, Ifenla, many people dream of change, but only a few persons take the bold step of entering politics. And you did this at such a young age, and as a woman in a system that often sidelines women's voices here and there, make women feel like they are not worth it. In fact, we even have the push the bill seeking for more seats for women and all of that. But my question now is, what inspired? Yes. My question is, what inspired your decision to venture into politics, and what was the leap of faith like when you tried to do that?
Okay. So I would say, I sincerely, and this is me being sincere and honest, I won't say that there was an actual time when I just woke up and said, you know what, I think being in politics is what I want to do. But however, I like to say that I'm not a regular human being. I mean, and I say that with all sense of responsibility and no sense of arrogance or pride, right? Yes, I'm a lawyer. I mean, obviously, I must have studied law. However, when I was at Obafemi Awolowo University, initially, I actually studied political science. I mean, initially, I was admitted into political science, and that was because the university wasn't allowed to do law. Law was not accredited during that year. And I remember my father and I just going through, the JAMB brochure, And my father said, you know what? I think politics sounds interesting. I mean, you and I have always argued about newspaper, current
Politics. Yeah.
stuff in the newspaper. So why not do political science? And maybe if law is accredited, you can then, move on to law, because he always knew I wanted to study law. Right. And I said, okay, fine. So year one, I continued and all, but towards the end of that year, I got information that the second year, the NUC, I think, would allow Obafemi Awolowo, University to allow to accommodate students to study law. So I said, I called my dad and I said, okay, this is the latest. And my father said, do you want to continue political science, or do you want to, start all over again? And because of the kind of course, it wasn't English language, it wasn't communications. I had to start all over again. If it was English language or communications, maybe I might have done, what do they call it now? Is it direct entry or something? So I'll be in 200
direct
level
entry,
law.
begin 200 level,
Exactly.
yes.
Yeah, but that wasn't the case. So I had to start all over again. And I told my father, I actually think I want to do law. I don't think I want to do this sports science again. It doesn't look like something, I don't even understand majority of the courses I'm doing, right? So I did JAM again, passed my JAM and started law all over again. However, interestingly, now while I was studying law during the day, I was also very active in my church fellowship as a drama person. Remember, I said I'm not your usual, human being, so to speak. However, in the faculty, I was very, very active when it came to student representation, not necessarily running for office. I prefer to support people who wanted to run for office. One of my very good friends those years, she's still my very good friend, Deliverance, she wanted to run for office when we're in 400 level, as I think 500 level as the VP. And I remember that I told her, what, you want to do this, you can go for it. When it came to moot and mock competition, it's a committee, in law, I was very active. So I would say that anything that had to do with activism, not necessarily the law kind of activism, I would say that I was always there. But it did occur to me, it didn't cut across to me as practicing politics. Averagely, you would expect that someone who is in politics now must have been in student union, right? But funny enough, I didn't think I even liked anything student union. I didn't like the way they were always walking around, Aluta Continua, Victoria Satan, the violence, and it felt all too ill, like, nah. But then I would say that the fire was still there somewhere, right? And fast forward to service year, I was also an ESCO and executive at NCCF, the service itself, fast forward to law school, and fast forward to 2017, I was selected to represent my state. I'm from Ogun State, by the way, for a national development reality program. And you had to come by voting, by showing that you want to represent your state. But that wasn't the crux for me. The crux for me was the fact that we had to go back to our state. Now, I was working in Lagos in the law firm. As a matter of fact, I was the head of chambers at that time. But we had to go back to our state because it was more a grassroots national development program or project. So we had to go back to our state, meet with local government chairmen, traditional rulers, even a state governor, if possible, to show that, yes, we are representing, we've been selected to represent our states. Long story short, I would say that, like I said earlier, the fire for activism, even though I didn't recognize it to be a political representation, has always been there for me. But time and chance, I joined the Young African Leaders Initiative Network. Later in 2018, I ran for office as PRO. So you can see all the connections, right? I ran for office as PRO. And I joined the network in 2018. I became a volunteer, was very close to almost all the ESCOs, the outgoing ESCOs, the incoming ESCOs. So by 2019, when I decided to run for office, PRO, Public Relations Officer, I won. I was an executive that year. And the year after that, 2020, someone connected me, or rather referred me to the national chairman of my party. So that's the reason why I said it's even though from the beginning of when I was in secondary school, university, I wasn't that actively politically conscious, but I would say that that fire of people's representation has always been there for me. And the person I am now, the woman in politics I am now, I would say that I would still rather say that I am more for people's representation, because the word politics has been abused and harassed and molested over and over and over again in Nigeria. Reason being that the people in leadership who are supposed to set put the record straight, to put institutions in place, frameworks in place, right? Accountability frameworks, integrity frameworks, are not doing what they're supposed to do. So when you hear politics, the first thing that comes to your mind is, they've come again, right? So that's why I'm rather using the word human or people's representation, because that's I've never always been a politician, but when it comes to representing people, being the voice for people, if anyone is having an issue where there is social injustice, trust me, Ifenla would always be there. There is a possibility that Ifenla would be there, right? That's been it for me, and that's why I'm where I am right now.
That's really interesting, and an interesting background. I mean, this background sets the tone for the conversation. And this is you explaining why you would prefer to be referred to as a human representative or people representative and all of that. But now let's talk about what 2023 felt like, your experience, and looking back at 2023 House of Assembly candidacy where you ran, or the election as well. What would you say some of your biggest learning experiences or defining moments were from that journey? How did it kick off? You could just begin by telling us how it started off, how that dream came alive. Was it again one of the ideas that people ran to you for because you've proven yourself in the past, so let's give Ifenla the ticket again? Or just tell us about your learning experience and then the defining moment in that journey.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joshua, for that question. I shortly mentioned earlier that I was referred by a friend in the Yali network to the national chairman of my party. I mean, I might as well mention the party ADC, the coalition party, and it was a national position. And I would say that, knowing what I know now, if anyone was to ask me, oh, I want to be part of a political party, how do I start? I would tell the person, start from the bottom upwards. But for me, I was privileged to have started from the top downwards through the appointments. I mean, I don't think I would have gotten to where I am now, the knowledge I know now, without the appointment. And I was telling someone recently that for the rest of my life, I would always, no matter how I talk about different points, like I just did, from secondary school to university, courses I studied and what have you, I would always mention that appointment, because I would say that appointment kind of validated what I'd always known about myself, but I didn't put words to it. However, I would say that one of the biggest lessons for me, which I would love to share to anyone that cares to listen, especially Nigerian youths and women, is that enough with social media knowledge about running for office or getting involved in politics. You have to practically, physically get involved, like on site. You just have to get involved on site. The reason is because prior to that time, I mean, I was coming from an NGO space. The knowledge I had, project management, monitoring and evaluation, tracking projects, monitoring projects to be sure that the impact, the metrics, the logic framework you had in mind when you were designing that project, it's meeting its measures, you're measuring the impact and all those things. Those were the things I knew, and community engagement and what have you, stakeholders engagement. But you see, being in politics, oh my God, it is another thing entirely. And I also believe that if you're someone who has been able to actively been present in a political party, irrespective of whether it's on the national or local level, because it's almost the same thing, but different experience. But it's the same strategy, the same steps, the same politicking, right? So it's almost the same strategy, the same negotiations, the same lobbying and what have you, but then on a different level. If it's on the national, it might look as if it's on a bigger level, but if it's at the local level, it might look as if it's on a smaller scale, right? But it's still the same steps. So I would say that people should actively be involved, because despite my nepo, so to speak, that's the lingua franca that Nigerians have been saying recently, nepo
Yeah.
versus lapo.
Lapo,
I
yeah.
would say that, yeah, I would say that as at that time, I was almost a nepo baby in politics, right? With the privilege of an appointment. I had the
Okay.
backing of my superior, the national chairman. I was one out of about 3 or 4 women during NWC meetings. I wasn't just a woman, I was a young woman at that. We had, I think,
Mm.
about maybe 2 or 3 elderly women or older women, and there was just about 2 of us, myself and the then deputy national youth leader, you know, just the 2 of us who were females. And, in that kind of environment, you have elderly men who see you as their daughters. So you want, and this is Nigeria. Sir, you use the sir, you kneel, you
Yeah.
smile at
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
you know. And I would say to an extent, I would say they really accommodated us. And the
Mm.
reason, and this is not me holding a brief for the party because I'm not being invited as a spokesperson, right? I would say that it was a privilege because that is not what you see happening everywhere. It doesn't happen in political parties at all. For you to see women just being given the space, and it doesn't happen because power
Okay.
is not
Okay.
served a la
Mm.
carte.
Yeah.
Power is
True. True.
taken. It is
Taken.
not given. So when you find
Mm.
yourself in a space where you are appointed, trust me, it is a huge privilege, right? So that's
Yeah.
why I'm saying that anyone, I mean, enough with social media knowledge of what politics is. You have to experience it for yourself. I'm sorry, I have to go a little bit biblical. What comes to mind was the Samaritan woman. After she met with Jesus, she went back, and because she couldn't just hold it to herself, she had to tell people, you have to experience this man. That is what politics is. Everybody in their lifetime needs to experience politics. They need to experience what I call the politics inside politics, because there is politics inside politics. If you think that you're a politician and your colleagues have not shown you politics, now this is a description. So imagine you just finished the meeting and then everybody go their own way. And then the second day you see something else happening other than what you all agreed. Trust me, politics within politics has happened.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
your schooling in politics has not ended if you do not understand that after that meeting, you need to meet with critical stakeholders of that meeting, even though you are also a critical stakeholder. But they are critical stakeholders and they are critical stakeholders. So you need to meet with them. I mean, if they are going to a beer parlor, you can go with them by all means, even if you do not drink. Just go with them, sit with them, listen to what they are saying. Because in case maybe part of the agenda of the discussion is to set up a committee or something like that. And let's say there was no intention for you to be there in that committee because it's not maybe in your role description or something like that. But because these critical stakeholders are going to a beer parlor or to a club or going somewhere after that meeting, and trust me, it happens at night, and you just decide to tag along with them. And during that discussion, I'll say, Ifenla, you said, why don't you want to join this thing? We know you are doing some other things, but just join. You can learn 1 or 2 things. And guess what? Before you know it, they put your name. They call it, I'm trying to remember the word now. Oh, I hope I remember it. So the meaning of that word I'm trying to remember is when you are co-opted. Yes, it's co-opting. When you are
Okay.
co-opted into a committee, when you're not supposed to be, you are not an initial member of that committee. It's a co-opting process. And most of the time, and this is also another politics within politics that happen. So let's say a committee list is out and you see that your name is not there. And you call the decision makers that, sir, and I want my name to be in that committee. Oh. Not even because you want to do anything, but because you want to have a stake in the decision that committee will set up. So you find a way to get your name there because you won't be a decision maker if you are not a member of that committee. So you find a way to get yourself co-opted into that committee. You understand? Now, you won't learn this thing outside. You won't learn this thing in the banking sector because there are rules, there are laid down rules and regulations. But in politics in Nigeria, yes, there are general rules, but most of the time they are unspoken rules. They are unanimous rules that everybody knows, and you need to learn on the job. I would say that was one thing for me. And coincidentally, unfortunately, I was holding a 3 in 1 role. I was officially the comms and programs director. I was a directorate of the party. But guess what? That role was not even in the constitution. It was designed specifically for me, right? Even though my state, the zoning was for a publicity secretary. But the party felt, you know what? It seems you have lots of skills, not just comms, not just designing programs or projects, which is where you're coming from. But you also have that confidence to be a spokesperson, so to speak. And because we didn't have a public secretary at that time, so you can just double as the 3, right? So it was a learning phase for me. And a political structure is not your average NGO structure where you have Monday reporting, you clock in, you tell the HR your to-dos of last week, and then your to-dos for the week. And on Friday, you send your to-dos for the week, and all those things. You come late, you get sanctioned. There's nothing like that, honestly. You have a supervisor who allows you, if depending on your role, who allows you to do whatever needs to be done, which was what was peculiar for me. Because, I mean, this was a small party, didn't have the kind of traction it's having now, didn't have much money, which was the truth, did not have money at all, not even didn't have much money. So I would say that my experience as an NGO space person or professional who knew how to make impact, how to design, frameworks without budgets being available, it helped me a whole lot. And so and I'm going to end here, right? Because I know you probably have some other questions you want to ask. But okay, awesome. But what stood out for me was the fact that coming from that space helped me a whole lot. But I discovered that there were lots of clashing. Say for instance, because of my department or my role, once in a while or several times we needed to invite media people for a press briefing, and at times it could be as the odds, subject matter, something that wasn't planned, and you just need to get media people present in the next 1 hour. I had to learn that on the job. I didn't have that experience prior to that time, right? I needed to affiliate myself, get the trust of media people. I mean, even with the NGO space skills I had, I didn't really have PR skills, so to speak, because there's also a kind of skill you need as a media person. They need to trust you that, yes, you would always have their back. You are like the intermediary between your party and media people. And so you can invite them, even if there's even no money on ground. And they would come, because in Nigeria, you don't just invite media people without having a budget, right? They are doing a work. They need to get stories. But then when they trust you enough, there's a point in which you can invite them and still find a way to appreciate their coming around, but they trust you already. And then there's also that place of, you want to be able to monitor what you're doing and be sure that, okay, and that was where one of the clashes, started coming in. Like, this is a political party. It is an open space for everybody. This is not an NGO. Nobody is tracking anything. I mean, money has to be spent every day. So you can't be counting everything and keeping records, because it's not something that is known in the political structure in Nigeria. But for someone like me who has worked on, several NGO space, Youngsters Development Initiative, YDI, Yali Abuja, Cedar Seed Foundation, Network of Disabled Women, I understood what it meant that even if I'm not the financial secretary or the auditor or the accountant, I need to make sure that when it comes to money management, I am practically following the money. But then it wasn't a structure system that it's familiar in the political space. right? So I learned art. I was born, but I had to learn quickly. It wasn't time for you to start crying. Oh, they don't like me. They are harassing me, or they are ganging up against me. No, you have to, like, when you are done crying, auntie, wake up, get back to the work and get the work done, and
All
find
right.
a way to work with the people that looks as if it's difficult working for them, of working with them. That's another thing about politics, because there is this saying in politics, um, sins are hardly forgiven. You can do something and think, oh, okay, they'll forgive me and we'll move on. It happens because that's why people decamp. They leave one party for another party after doing stuff, and they come back and it looks as if it's forgiven forever. That's not true. So if you're also that kind of person that thinks, oh, once an enemy, forever an enemy, you cannot survive in a political platform, because politics is about interests, and people are lying. People, it looks as if the relationship is going smoothly because the interests are still aligning. But you only see war, chaos, and gbasgbos, like we like to say in Nigeria, when interests no longer aligns. Now, all these
Yeah.
things I'm saying, it looks as if, oh, I'm sharing some words of knowledge from the, book of Psalms or something. But no, it's what experience has taught me. And it's the fact that you cannot afford to be rigid. I used to be like that. It's just a one-way traffic. I give someone money to get us stuff, to do this and that, and it doesn't get done. I need the money back. I need results. But it doesn't happen like that in politics, right? So it was just a space of learning and learning. And those same things were some of the things that helped me when I decided to run for office,
I
right?
mean,
It wasn't like maybe I just, what did you say?
I was going to just chip in. I was going to
Yeah.
chip in because you're cutting to, I think you're preempting my very next question as well, which is
Okay,
around,
okay,
yeah,
okay,
which is
okay,
around challenges, and you're already, talking about some
okay,
of the challenges. And I've also noted down some very
okay.
interesting points that you've made as well
Yeah.
around rules, spoken and unspoken rules in politics. And then there's also politics inside politics again. And I'm like, God, what does this mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, did any of these come up as a challenge to you? And when you talk about politics, these terms that you mentioned earlier in your learning experience, are these some of did these things come up as challenges during your experience in politics and all of that? And then how were you able to overcome them? And then, of course, I'm going to have some follow-up questions to this, but I'm just asking this because you had made mention of this and then trying to tie it to challenges that you probably experienced. Were these challenges, and then how were you able to overcome these things?
Okay, awesome. Yes, yes. It wasn't, the last 5 years has not been a rosy one. Saying all these things to anyone will look as if, oh, it's been very, very rosy. No, it's been I would say the first 2 years was very, very difficult. Difficult in the sense that I felt, no, this is Nigeria. We have to get things right. We have to, if we meet with people, we can't afford to welcome people who have done stuff with other party. We can't afford to welcome money bags. We should just be that rigid. But I learned the hard way that when it comes to politics, within the political circle, right, you can decide
Mm.
to have certain values for party management purpose. But if you're a
Okay.
political party that has intention to field people to win from House of Assembly level, councillor, chairman, House of Assembly, rep, Senate, guba, and maybe president, you can't afford to say, oh, there are people you want, there are people you do not want. Because
Mm.
outsiders would be the ones to vote during general elections. But
Elections,
it's only
yeah.
party members that vote during during
Primaries,
party
yeah.
primaries or party elections, right? So I would
Mm.
say, so yes, so I would say that it was a huge learning period for me, and
Okay.
unfortunately, at that time, I won't. There was really no. It was more like an autopilot experience. So I won't
Mm.
say there was a platform or a set of people that I could always run to. I had a few of them, senior colleagues really, that I could always run to. but it wasn't, that space wasn't, how do I put it? So the political space is not an hospital. It's not a rehab space where where you need to be pampered and, given TLC, tender loving care. It's a place where you have to unlearn, you have to learn and relearn on a 24/7 basis. A typical example I would give, I discovered at some point that because of the role I was, the role I was manning at that time, I discovered that my state didn't really have a structure, right? As a result of the election before that time. The election before that time was in 2019. And there was like serious pressure from me, people saying, oh, you can't be from this state and you're the national person and your state doesn't have a structure. I mean, in Yoruba, there's that saying that your house is always a foundation for you, or a resting place. So don't think that because you are, quote and unquote, settled at the top, you are not going to look back at where you're coming from, because every person in politics must always have that solace at the grassroots, right? And hearing about that, it was a huge turning point for me, because it did make sense. And so I had to start using some of the skills I'd learned, trying to lobby, ask questions, so that my state could have a structure. And then fast forward to when that process was about to start, we had to find a way to put in people within my space. A few colleagues in my space, by my space, I mean in the political space, who also shared the same value system that we shared as a party. And we're able to make sure that that happened. And I would say that to a good positively, right? The positive aspect of it was it made things very easy when I decided to run for office. However, the negative aspect of it was, like I said, I was a little bit privileged. I was coming from the national with the intention to run for office at the bottom. So it wasn't a case of, okay. And in instances like that, being a national does not give you, it doesn't give you clearance. If at the best you can do as a national representative is to come represent the party and go. But if you want to run for office, it is a totally different ball game, because it's even easier when you're coming from the grassroots. Your people are the ones representing you, or rather, your people are the ones saying we want you to represent us. And so when you look back, you have their support. Even when money backs come, they would always tell you, don't worry, they give us this money. We will even use that money to campaign for you. They think we are with them, but we are not with them. We actually want you because we came to you. That is one of the best measures of, people representation, when people actually want you to represent them. But in my case, it was a matter of, I was coming from the top to the bottom. And in politics, it's also very easy to an extent when you have someone who is putting in a good word for you. And so say, for instance, someone who is respected either at the national level or even at the grassroots level and says, oh, this is my mentee, just let's give her that position. And so even when people at the grassroots are saying, oh, who is this person? Where is she coming from? She just wants to usurp the space. She's just coming from nowhere. Look at all of us that have been here for a long time. But when they hear that this person is not just a novice, this person has the backing of so person, it gives them credence and it makes it easier. But in my case, it wasn't like that, because I didn't belong to any political class. Remember, I was coming from NGO space. So the only support system I had were my seniors at the top. And unfortunately, it wasn't like maybe they were in my state, because you see, state politics is about state politics. It is not a national politics. The best national can do is try to push you. But God forbid, if your village people want to stand against you at the local level, there's nothing national can do about it, because every politics is at the grassroots. I would say those were some of the difficulties I faced, but it made it easy for me, because while I was in office, I didn't just deny my state. Like I said, I was involved in setting up the structure, making sure people had their own positions at the state, at the local, at the ward level. So when it came to time for me to run for office and time for party primaries, I wasn't a novice. I was going for some of their meetings, even though as a national representative. So they already knew me. And being a woman, I'm young, they had never really seen that instance where a young woman would be at the national and representing them. So they saw me as one of theirs. So I would say that was what really made things easier for me. Otherwise, it would have been very, very difficult.
Thank you. Yeah, on the flip side, quickly, you experience these challenges, but let's talk about some of your achievements, the ones you're proud of, as regards how you advocated for inclusion for women, young people, and persons with disabilities. What are some of your achievements as well? You can just quickly tell us about this. Thank you.
Yeah. So I would say that one of the privileges that even got me, or one of the reasons that got me the appointment was because my seniors were interfacing into a youth-faced structure. And
Okay.
and looking at where I was also coming from, my belief system in inclusion for women, youths, and persons with disability. I would say that one of the structures or frameworks we did, there was a project we did, 300 Spartans. Me and a couple of, friends, Chidima, Khalil, right? And we designed this framework with the intention to have about 300 young persons, women, youths, and persons with disability to run for office, especially for the legislative arm of government in the
That
2020s.
sounds.
If we had not designed that project, right, people wouldn't have had the opportunity, because we told them, when you join the party, don't worry, nomination of form, expression of interest form, you don't have to pay for it. You just probably pay, not even probably, you just pay party management fee, your party due, and you're ready to run for office. And you pass through the necessities for the project itself, because again, that's the difference between project management and politics. Politics is just you getting a letter from someone speaking for you, and then you get in. But no, one thing that we put our foot down on was we didn't just want any youth, any young person. We had a team that was running graphics, social media, websites, customer care, and we made sure that the information and documents that these aspirants, these applicants were sending, we made sure that they were not fortified, right? They were not falsified. Yeah. And we had to check them because the age range was there. So we had to even check right down to their birth certificates to be sure that yes, because we don't want to end up being liars, right? Yeah, and true. I would say that that was one thing that helped me. If I wasn't coming from the project management space or NGO space, I would have just ended up finding myself in the muddy waters of politics. And I want to have that professionality in doing things. So I would say that was one of, in fact, last week, I posted something on Facebook and someone just made reference to that project and said, Ifenla, if not for that project, that he wouldn't have had the opportunity to run for office, right? So I would say that that project it was something that helped me to put my foot forward. If not, people get appointments on political space and they finish their appointment, they finish their tenure, and they can't even look back to say, this was what they were able to achieve, or look back to even look at people who benefited. And I'm not talking about palliatives. I mean, in politics, there's palliatives. They share water, they share gari, they share food, they share Ankara. No, I'm talking about real life changes. Why? Yeah. Because we opened the door for people to come in.
I think, yeah, that's really, really interesting and the way to go. I mean, these real life changes, like you just made mention of, I mean, these skills that will stay with young people are what is actually needed. This reorientation of the mind for them to see themselves as the beacon of hope, and then, to lead the next generation of integrity and all of this. These are the things that we need in our society. And it's very important because when we do this, everyone is included, everyone is carried along. there will be less room for political talks, and integrity also will be on the rise because people will know what to do exactly. I really love the concept, the idea of the whole 300 Spartans. Reminds me of the movie. But yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah,
That was the intention. That was the
intention.
intention.
Yeah,
That was the
right, right,
intention.
right. That's really good. That's really nice. So yeah, from your perspective, right? I just need you to tell us how does exclusion breed corruption? When we talk about corruption, we see that corruption happens because some people are not carried along, or some people are not taught what exactly to do, how to lead with change and integrity. And when I say not carried along, I'm simply referring to the fact that they are not educated to stand for their rights, to stand for morals, and so on. So now the question I'm asking is, how do you think exclusion breeds corruption? And then how can inclusion that you just spoke about make our society better?
Okay, thank you. So it's actually very, very simple. And because politics is a game of numbers, politics is
Mm.
about numbers. And when you're not included, when you're not counted, you know, alongside several decision-making processes, I mean, obviously, okay, so say for instance, let's say that a decision is going to be made and just a few people, this is actually really the case in several instances in leadership in Nigeria, not just even politics. Let's say a decision is about to be made or an action plan needs to be made, and instead of every critical stakeholder in a political system is not carried along, or I'm actually trying to I'm trying to see how best to put this, because again, it's something that people would only really learn, like I said earlier, on the job, like if
Yeah,
they were
yeah.
really in such political setting. Okay, let me say it this way. So let's say in a department, there are about, say, 20 people in a department, and maybe they are not, staff welfare is not going on well, and they've tried telling their HOD to speak on their behalf. And maybe at some point, the HOD, and maybe for whatever reason, the HOD has been getting these benefits, but the HOD is
Mhm,
not speaking for them. And then,
mhm.
because of politics, the HOD decides to maybe select 2%, right, to join
Yeah.
him or her the next time he or she wants to go speak to the ED. But before going to the ED, the HOD tells them, you know what, all these inquiries and feedback people have been asking for, I've never done that, because I mean, you all know the ED is not available. So this is what you guys are going to do. You guys are going to join me. We would go and come back and just tell them a few things, and that would be done. Right? Of course, because at that point, the HOD needs their backing. And so they would say, but we can't just do this. If we do this, that would look like we are betraying our people. Are you going to maybe add to our salary? Or maybe you give us some other allowances that we've been missing. And so it's a give and take. Because at that point, the HOD knows that he or she needs the backing of these two people. And so a deal is struck at that point. And every time there is a meeting with the ED, you see there is only these three people that go to the ED. Or maybe it gets to a point when they have to meet with the board of directors. It's just these three people that go, as opposed to everybody actually going. Now, that is what happens. So it's a default thing when you are not included in any decision-making process. Just expect that because you are not there, your interest would not be backed up.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
the instance I gave when I said that back at my state, when a structure needed to be put and all, because I was at the national, I mean, I can't hold two positions at the same time. But I had to make sure that some of my friends who had also been in the party at that time also got involved. So at that point, at the state executive on its own, I had about 2 or 3 people that I could easily reach out to. And so it was very, very easy when it was time for me to run for office and, getting the form, doing the primaries and what have you. It was so easy. So it is not something that is really cast in stone. That's the
Mm.
truth. But the trick is, if you want to be included, if you want your interests to be covered, you need to have somebody that you trust. You trust someone who is like you, that believes what you believe, in that decision-making space. Because if that is, and it's not really about the numbers, actually. It's not about the numbers. And that's the truth. It's just about the people who are in that decision-making space. Are they people who think about others' interests? If they are not, then trust me, they won't think about your interests. Because I mean, you might even end up having more than 3, you can have 6, 7, 10, and they are also more like people who are selfish and greedy and they don't care about others, right? So exclusivity in politics or decision making, it's natural. It is a natural system because while they are there, they are not even thinking about you. Another instance, let's say again on a decision making space, there was something I learned about reasonable accommodation. That's a word, it's a phrase that is used in the persons with disability community.
Okay.
And so because I had volunteered and worked with people in this space for years, it was almost a default setting for me at some point during project designs. And at every point in time, let's say maybe we want to hold a program, let's say at a place, and we have intention of involving or bringing persons with disability. By default, the first thing I'm thinking is, does that place have a ramp? Is that place accessible for people, who are on wheels? Are we going to have a sign language interpreter? That is, if we are sure persons with disability would come. Is another thing if you're sure they won't come. There would be no need. But if you're inviting them, then you have to make sure that people who are on wheels, there is a wheel, there is a ramp for them to move in. You have to make sure that there is a sign language interpreter for the purpose of, people who are not visually impaired in this space, in this instance, but people who are hearing impaired. You understand that I wouldn't have learned this if I didn't have that experience. But then for someone like me, if I find myself in a space where reasonable accommodation decisions are being made, I'm going to speak out. So that's why I said it's not even about the numbers. Just one person is enough. Just one person in a decision-making space is enough to put corruption in its place. I mean, to nip it in the bud. Now, if maybe there is budget to accommodate persons with disability, and then because people in that space, they have no idea, it doesn't even cross their mind that persons with disability would be around. So why should we even get ramps? But because and what would happen to that money? They will find a way to swallow it or sweep it under the carpet. But because someone like me who has that knowledge is there, I would say, but we have extra money for persons with disability. Then why are we not doing this, and this? So I'm coming from the place of knowledge, right? So that's why I'm saying that it's almost very easy. We think we are not excluded, there will be corruption. But at times, it's not just about not being included. When you're included, do you even have the right information to put to the table when decisions are being made?
All right. Thank you so much, Ifenla. Interesting. This conversation is really lengthy, but thank you so much. And I just got a notification that we have 5 minutes left. So
Oh, wow.
I wonder. Yeah, I'm really wondering. And I still have a couple of questions, but I'll just try to put them together and then see and then see if you can just keep it to a minute or very straight to the point. But yeah, I just need you to define integrity personally, and then what this means for you. And then are there some habits or systems you have put in place that helped your own leadership journey, so that a young person who is thinking of going into running for office, they can pick from your own strategy or system? Let's hear you. Thank you.
Okay, Joshua, I think you want to set me up at this point with this question.
Not at all.
Honestly,
at all.
Because there are some questions you don't want to ask someone in politics. You don't want to ask them what integrity means, because they won't tell you it is A.
No.
They won't tell you it is B. They won't tell you it is black or white. They will say it is gray.
Gray. Is that what it means for you? No,
That's the truth.
But yeah,
and Kolisi, don't tell me, I'm not just a woman in politics. I'm also a lawyer. So you see,
right.
you want to use my words against me?
No way.
It's but that's on a lighter note. Anyways, I feel integrity is not just a one-word definition. I mean, when you think accountability, when you think transparency, I mean, anyone or people who are able to put these measures in place, I would say that to a large extent, they should be able to say they are people of integrity, right? One thing that really puts me in check, and trust me, in politics, even people who have integrity, they also have to put themselves in check day and night, every day. And now this is not because this is not because anybody might want to, maybe just set them up or anything. That happens in politics anyways, because no matter to what extent you claim to have integrity, there would always be a testing phase. But this is more like a personal, check-in phase for everybody in politics who claim to have integrity or desire to be persons of integrity. It's necessary to have people like you or people you look up to that would always put you in that check. I would say that was what worked for me. And one thing I always did in those days was anytime the party, had some allocations, some budgeting allocations. Joshua, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
Okay. Anytime the party had some budgeting allocations, till date, I still have that folder. I always made sure that I'm not an accounting inclined person. So I didn't really know Excel in those days, but I think I'm pretty good now. But I would open a Word document, do the tabular, whatever, and input figures, amount, what was spent, what was not spent. Even money that I used to buy credit for myself, money that I used for my own logistics, I'll put them. Money that I used for my own honorarium. Yeah, I was that kind of person that I would say this money that was used, I took it and used it for my own stipend. And I used it to pay this other person their stipend, their appreciation, party colleagues, and I'll put it there. There was a time a colleague saw that document and said, Ifenla, you are setting me up. I said, no, because my name is also there. And the reason is, and so that's why I said that integrity is not, it's very easy to say, oh, I'm a person of integrity. No, you have to be seen as being that, because if you're not too careful, you might even end up harming yourself.
All
Till
right.
date,
Thank you.
I still have
Thank
those
you.
documents.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ifenla. So let me just quickly ask you this question. How can
Yeah.
people reach out to you? Although, yeah, how can people follow you, your social media handles and all of that? I just want to get that before
Okay.
3 p.m. Yeah.
Okay. So on Facebook, my name on Facebook is Ifenla Oligbinde. I think I'm the only Ifenla Oligbinde in this life. I really think so.
Okay.
Same on LinkedIn, Ifenla Oligbinde. On X is Ifenla Jedediah, and the name is female governor on X, and then Instagram is also Ifenla Jedediah.
All
Ifenla dot
right.
Jedediah. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just quickly put this out there as well, but I'll come back if we have time. Yeah, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Step Up Nigeria's podcast show. Thank you, Ifenla, for joining us. You can do well to follow us on all social media platforms on X, formerly Twitter. We are at step_up_Nigeria. On Facebook, we are at Step Up Nigeria. On Instagram, we are at step_up_Nigeria. And on LinkedIn, you can find us at Step Up Nigeria. It's such a pleasure. It's been my honor having you, Ifenla, do this with us. But just so that we know, your advice to young people, what's your advice to young people? And then your last words before we wrap this up.
My advice is actually simple. Just get involved. You don't have to be in a political party, and that is being fair. I won't say this just because I'm in a political party. You don't have to be in a political party to be involved. CVR has started, continuous voters, CVE,
Registration.
continuous voters exercise has started.
Okay. Okay.
Register. Get someone to register. If you're a graphics designer, do a flyer. Every week or every month, you can come up with something exciting, create content to create the awareness, right? So everyone has to be involved. And finally,
Yeah.
I would say that I feel the reason why corruption continues in Nigeria and Nigerians are also enabling corruption, it's because it has not occurred to us that decisions in electing bad people, bad leaders, is why we are in this economic situation in Nigeria. So our voting decision has a direct expression and a direct representation and influence in the outcome of the economy. So you want a good economy, vote better leaders. If you want a sane and safe environment with good security and what have you, then let's find a way to hold our leaders accountable. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ifenla. It's been my pleasure and utmost honor having you on this edition of the podcast recording. A lot of things to unpack. I mean, this is making me think and truly believe that, yeah, young people can get into politics, and then hopefully we get Ifenla on a follow-up conversation on these, that would really, really mean a lot. Because
Definitely.
yeah,
We can actually have a follow-up conversation, definitely.
Yes, we might explore an X space. But yeah, this also brings to mind the whole I was listening to the news this morning, and then I heard the current Tokyo exhibition in Japan and all of that. And then Japan also recognized the fact that young people are they have a role to play. They are like the backbone of the economy. And then they said that, and this also proves the point that young people need to get involved. They need not to sit anymore at the passenger seat or feel like they don't have anything to offer, or they are not interested. But young people need to get into these things the right way. And in order to do this the right way, you need to have a value or a guiding principle that directs your purpose, just like Ifenla does, so that you're not, tossed here and there and all of that, and then know where you're coming from. All of these things matter. Ifenla spoke excellently on how, you spoke excellently on how people kept recommending you. But I think the reason why people kept asking you to run for office in your tertiary, your university days, and all of that, appointments and here and there, is because of the value you embody, because of the integrity you also have. So the people have tested you the first time and see that they can trust you. Why not? Let's give her the positions. Let's give her the positions. It's important to take note of all of these things as young people. Do not lose yourself in the world of politics. It can be really one thing we have not actually discussed is what you said, social media knowledge as well. It's different. You see, on social media, a lot of people talk, a lot of people speak, keyboard warriors here and there, but doing it is entirely different. And this is what you're speaking to us about, and it's really interesting and important that people are listening, that people are taking the right step and getting actively involved the right way. It's been my pleasure. I'm Joshua Odidi. Thank you so much for listening to Step Up Nigeria's podcast. Until next time, stay safe, and don't forget, integrity and inclusion are not just ideals, they are actions that shape the future of our nation. So as a young person, continue to imbibe, and not just imbibe, but act with these qualities. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye. Thank you.